And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined as usual by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. So we have a pile of new stories to cover, a bunch of new e-bikes we're going to go over, but also some other interesting things. Solar-powered electric boat, a guy built a DIY electric motorbike that sits six people, a whole just pile, smorgasbord, all sorts of interesting stories. So where are we going to start off this week, Seth?
All right. Rad Power Bikes launches RadTrike, the first major e-bike maker with an affordable three-wheeler. And I guess affordable is kind of the key word there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever we talk about affordable e-bikes, everything's relative, and so we won't, hold this one back too far. But the price is 24.99, and for some of you, are going to be saying, "Well, Rad sells bikes that are like, 1,300 bucks. How is that affordable?" But if you compare the price of electric trikes across the industry, most of these cost well into the three thousands of dollars. Some of them are four or $5,000. So there are a few other e-trikes out there that are less than 2,500 bucks, but they're from some smaller brands, some boutique builders, and some just like straight up kind of Alibaba style imports. So this was a big launch from what is obviously a major brand, the largest North American e-bike maker, the RadTrike here. So super exciting in my opinion. What we have here is basically a three wheeler. We all know what a trike looks like. It is a Delta trike, which means it has the two wheels in the back, not the front, which is the more stable way to build a trike. So we would have loved to have seen a trike with two wheels in the front, but that's going to be more expensive. So we've got an old school Delta trike setup, but it's not something that is going to be too massive. It's a folding trike. It's got smaller wheels at 18 inches. So it's designed to be as compact as possible for a big bike, and it's really going to open the door to people who aren't comfortable riding a two wheeler. Maybe they have balance issues, but also for utility as well. You can put a big basket on the back, and of course has the mount in the front for a basket, and so this could be a big cargo platform that you don't have to worry about tipping over the way that you might with a typical cargo bike, that you have to, support all that weight at stops, especially when you have weight high up on a cargo bike. With something like this, a three wheeler, you never really have to worry about, balancing it because it's just a super stable platform. Of course, the downside of trikes is that stability in corners is not as good. Whereas a bike leans into corners, a trike tends to feel tippy in the corners. So the way Rad approached that was that they made the rear as wide as they possibly could while keeping it narrow enough to still fit through a doorway. So it's pretty wide on the rear back there. You'll find it's wider than a lot of trikes, and that should help it be not too tippy. But it's sort of a trade-off there, I'd say, between stability at rest and stability in the turns. Another way they sort of headed off that issue at the pass is that they didn't make the bike very fast. It's limited to 14 miles an hour, which sounds super slow, but if you've ever ridden a trike, when you're doing 14 or 15, it feels like a lot faster than it is. So I think that's another way to make sure that people who are getting back onto a bike after many years don't get in over their heads with a 20-mile-per-hour trike and flip themselves over. But for me, I'm very excited to see this, and I think it's going to open a lot of doors for people. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, I love the idea. My mother-in-law is kind of in that general category of possible trike users, and this sounds really good for her. Um, Obviously, like this isn't for everyone. This is going to be, a letdown if you're used to going 20, 25 miles per hour. Um, but it's also like I couldn't tell if it's a folding bike. You can actually fold it up, right?
Yeah, it's got a folding mechanism in the middle, and then it's also at the handlebars. So if you're just loading it in a car, you could, fold the bars down, or maybe the back of an SUV, maybe. So you could just fold the bars down and slide it right in. But if you need it to be even smaller, it does fold in half.
Yeah. So that I mean that's good for, taking to the beach perhaps or, the some bike trails. I do think this is like, limited use kind of situation, which it kind of justifies the higher price. It's not like Rad is going to be making a trillion of these, but yeah, it seems like, you know, a, a good product in an area that we'd like to see innovation in. So the price, $2,500, right?
Yes.
That's a little bit high for a typical, starter set, but you get, the rear wheel, the axle, like it's not just your typical e-bike. You get that seat with the back. Do these baskets come with it, or those are add-ons?
Unfortunately, they don't come with it. Yeah, there's a lot of money in accessories, so I would have loved to see them included because especially that back basket, I think that should basically be like mandatory equipment. Like, what's the point of just having nothing back there?
Right. I guess you could have like a stand for kids or something.
So
Um,
that's what I was thinking, but they actually made a point of saying that it's not rated for passengers, and so they don't want to like encourage people to put kids back there.
I think that's probably the lawyer side of the company talking.
Yeah, and to me that's a bummer because one of the biggest uses for trikes in Tel Aviv, where I live, is you always see families with like two or three kids on the back on like a long bench, dropping them off
Uh-huh.
at school. So it's like, a perfect second family vehicle.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great thing, and it might just be me, but I feel like the tires look a little bit like these are 20-inch, kind of like the Rad Runner tires, right?
They're actually 18s.
Oh, that's why they look smaller.
Right.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. It's like another non-standard Rad tire. So, I mean, I guess 18s probably exist out there in the world, but
Yeah, it's like
um,
a less standard. There are 18s you can buy, various 18-inch tires from brands, but it's not like, every bike shop stocks them kind of thing.
right. And I guess that does keep the weight low. Keeps the bike down a little bit lower than bigger wheels would. So that's a good thing. I mean, like I think it's not for everyone, obviously, but for a certain segment of the population, it's nice to have this option. It's going to get some people back on the bike that normally probably wouldn't be on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and you're going to have a test for us in a couple of weeks or months.
Yeah, I think in about 10 days or so. So
Oh,
not too
cool.
far from now, I should start testing it.
Nice.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right,
looking forward to it.
moving on. Uh, Our old buddies at Bosch are urging the US to adopt stricter e bike regulations that helped it dominate the European market. Real quick, one of the e bike CEOs that I talked to recently had really nasty things to say about Bosch. Obviously, this is not somebody who you know is in the same classification as Bosch, but apparently they're known throughout the e-bike industry as kind of pushing others around and kind of making things rough for the smaller bike companies. So with that in mind, let's talk about this.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's important to sort of understand the context of the e-bike market here. So Bosch, obviously, it's a huge company. Their e-bike division is also huge. They make complete electric bicycle drive units. So that means the motor, the controller, the battery, the display, like everything all in one. That's what they build. And in Europe, they're like the dominating force, right? I mean, so many electric bikes in Europe use a Bosch system. There are others, we see Brose, we see Yamaha, etc., but Bosch is like the go-to for so many brands. In the US, it's a lot more fragmented. There are Bosch powered e-bikes, but they're certainly not a majority. If anything, I would say probably hub motors are a majority in the US, and you'll find Bosch on higher end bikes. But one of the reasons that Bosch is so successful in Europe is that there are stricter regulations in many places that cover the entire e-bike drive system. And so because Bosch manufactures everything under one roof, they are more able to get these certifications. And of course, being a larger company, they can afford, the UL testing, that sort of thing, to basically document the fact that they conform to this complete e-bike system certification. In the US, we don't really have that. We have, some e-bike companies will do UL testing on their batteries to prove that they meet UL standards for lithium batteries, but there's no requirement. The Consumer Product Safety Commission doesn't say, you have to have some complete e-bike certification. And Bosch would certainly like to see that changed. for a number of reasons. The more outward reasons that they're saying is that it would promote safety. When you have to certify that all of the parts of the bike work together safely, then that you're not going to mismatch a battery and some wacky controller and create a fire hazard, that sort of thing. The downside of that is that it's much harder for smaller companies to compete, and especially smaller e-bike companies that use sort of the a la carte approach. They'll have a battery from one supplier, a motor from another, a controller from a third, that sort of thing. So they would have to then go and get the entire e-bike system certified through UL or any of these other certification companies that do testing, and that's like a huge barrier for smaller companies. And so on that side, they're saying, well, this would certainly, push us out of the market or make it much harder for us to compete with these massive companies like Bosch. And so you get this sort of trade-off where obviously it certainly would be a safety boost if all of these e-bike systems had to be tested to confirm that everything works together safely. And no one is against e-bike safety, of course, but it has to still be a fair marketplace as long as companies can compete in a safe manner. So I see what Bosch is saying in terms of, we want to make sure that, e-bikes are safe no matter who makes them, but it is a little bit self-serving if they're one of the companies that benefits from these strict regulations like we see in the European market.
Yeah, yeah, and the competitors can say, like, look what happened in Europe. Basically, they took over because there was they have all this money to throw at certification, and basically they're spending a lot of money on lobbying as well. So yeah, I know it's kind of a rough situation. The flip side is, yes, like batteries catching on fire in garages and in apartment buildings and bike shops is bad for the e-bike industry. So what do you do there? I don't know what the solution is exactly, but you know I don't know that the US market's going to turn on a dime like that. I think even if they're successful, there'll be some leeway to get more interesting bikes through the system.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Electric moped maker BREKR unveils belt drive electric bike with automated shifting.
So I don't know if you'll remember this, Seth. It was a while ago, but in 2021, we actually tested the moped, sort of like light motorcycle from this company. This is a Dutch company that they started with the Model B, and now they're rolling out the Model F, which is actually a electric bicycle with full functional pedals. And it's something of like a Dutch take on a Super 73, I would say. It follows the same design inspiration from their Model B, which was that main strut running from the head tube down to the rear axle, but it adds that long bench seat and a tubular frame to support the pedals, which, in my opinion, looks very much like a Super 73. Though at this point, I think every moped looks like a Super 73.
Right.
So, it is a very neat design. And as much as I like the way it looks, the real bummer here is the performance. Because it's a European electric bike, it is limited to that 250 watt and 25 kilometer per hour or 15 mile per hour limit. So you get what looks like a, super awesome, powerful looking e-bike that is basically like, neutered down into this toy of an e-bike, which to me is a shame when you have something that looks this cool.
Is there a way to unlock it, or is there a US version coming or something like that?
Uh, there doesn't appear to be any US version. If anything, the first version is only going to be available in the Netherlands, and then they're going to have a second version that's in like Germany, Belgium, and somewhere else, I think. And then the third version will be available across Europe, but there's no discussion of a US version yet, which is unfortunate because you have a good point that that's where you'd be able to open it up and have 750 watts and 28 miles per hour instead of such a slow and sort of weak e-bike.
Yeah, I mean, from the size of the rear hub motor, it actually looks like a genuine 250 watt motor. It's not like one of those "don't cut the red cable," because if you do that, it's going to be really fast situations. It looks like it's a genuine 250. I mean, I guess you could always just buy something on Alibaba and put a big hub motor back there or something. But
Yeah, at that point you're like, I mean, you're taking the risk of running afoul of the law. I know in Europe the police are actually more vigilant about modified e-bikes and illegal e-bikes as opposed to the US where no one really knows much about e-bike laws yet. So, you'd have to be a little careful with that, but certainly I see the motivation to want to make this thing faster and more powerful.
yeah, because I mean, 250 watts on a bike, it makes sense because it's small. This like looks like a lot of weight, a lot of tires. Uh, so 250 watts isn't going to push this thing very fast, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to go, you know, 20 miles per hour even probably too well.
Yeah, well, I mean it's limited to 15, so you'll never even
15,
find
yeah,
out.
I know. I know that it just seems like, oh, that's like 15 miles per hour is, kind of easy to get to on with pedals. Like, I don't even know. I guess for hills it's good, but yeah, I don't know. I guess we're spoiled over here, right? Kind of
Yeah,
feels
we're
like,
super spoiled. And it's funny because when we tested those Model Bs,
yeah,
those were also power limited and I think speed limited as well because we were in Germany. I think there are different regulations in Germany than there were in the Netherlands. So even those that we tested were kind of like neutered down to, slower performance.
we tested those at like the bike show, right, or the IAA or something.
IAA, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was like an enclosed area. We couldn't really open it up anyway.
Yeah,
But
but even then they didn't even feel that powerful. Like, really
no,
cool looking design, but when you have something that just looks like it's so much more powerful than it is, you wind up
yeah,
with a super underwhelming experience, even if it, performs just as well as every other, bike that maxes out the legal limit.
yeah. I mean, like it would be rough to go to the Europe right now. Like if I wanted to move to Germany or France or something, and my bike options would be pretty limited and I'd probably a little bit underwhelming. I think we're quite spoiled here.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I do have to say is they do have sort of the equivalent of class 3 e-bikes in Europe, but they are regulated like motorcycles
Motorcycles.
basically. Yeah, so you need,
Yeah.
insurance, license, registration.
That's probably what I would be doing, setting up something like that. And here's something I would be riding. The new 1500 watt full suspension electric bike pushes envelope with all-wheel drive.
So speaking of American e-bikes, I think Super Monarch is one of the sort of bikes that is best exemplifies what is a U.S. market e-bike. So this is from a company called eCells. They're based in Nevada, I think, and they make several different versions of the Super Monarch. This is their latest version. It's the all-wheel drive 1500 dual crown. So it's got the dual crown fork up front, which is sort of a motorcycle style fork, and this thing is just, first of all, it's double everything. So double batteries, double motors, dual suspension. Like it's basically two e-bikes smushed into one, if you think about it. And I've ridden past versions of this one, and the thing just rips. I mean, with that all-wheel drive, if you just turn on one of the two motors, which you can control like forward or rear wheel drive, you can already do burnouts. But then when you put both of them on at once, I mean, you just start like giggling if you get it into the dirt because you can just start like slinging rocks in every direction. It feels like you're on a dirt bike or an all-wheel drive dirt bike, yet you have the ability to actually like pedal it in the bike lane. And because it is a mountain bike style bike, it even pedals decently well. It's got a torque sensor. It's got, I think, 9 levels of pedal assist. So it certainly looks like something you would think, oh, no one's ever going to like ride that like a bike. But in fact, you certainly could use it as like, a pedal assist level 2, 3, get in a bit of a workout and then, take it to the trails and use the throttle and just like rip around. So it's kind of an interesting somewhere in between bike.
Yeah, excuse me. And it kind of it's that space between a typical e-bike and like a motor pedelec, I guess. It's funny. Our YouTube algorithm kind of threw down there the Monarch 2.2 kilowatt with uh, two dual motors as well. Same kind of idea there. Um, but this one comes in a little bit more expensive. I think what is the price on this one? 1,500? No.
So this is, I think, in the low 5,000s. I think it's at
Oh,
the
okay.
bottom of the post there. Maybe
Okay.
like 5,100, something like that. Um, and oh no, I think it's a little higher above that picture,
Okay.
maybe somewhere in the middle.
Oh, there it is.
So yeah, it's certainly expensive. It does have good suspension, so this isn't like cheap Alibaba suspension. This is like RockShox suspension, high quality quad piston disc brakes. So there's a lot of nice parts. It's
Nice light.
still quite expensive though for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting. I need to get myself on an all-wheel drive bike. I don't think I've really ridden one besides like at the bike shows.
Oh yeah, they're fun. It takes a while to get used to, and you can get yourself into trouble if like, especially when that front wheel starts spinning out, which
Hmm.
is not a sensation that we're used to, like having your front
Right.
wheel spin out.
Is that, I mean, I wonder if that's kind of, you have the battery on over the back wheel, but you will have another battery, you know, on the down tube, and then you have the motor on the front wheel. So I guess the weight is probably distributed pretty well, but anytime I see a battery over the back wheel after having driven the Pedigo city commuter, I'm always like, oh, I didn't like that sensation of like being, in half wheelie mode all the time.
Yeah, well, this one, I can tell you this one from when I rode the past versions, the whole thing is so heavy that you don't get that feeling. Like you certainly feel planted.
Hmm.
I think the Pedigo, like it tried to be as light as it could while being a heavy bike, and with all that weight in the rear, definitely like that front wheel is just so light. But this one, the
Right,
whole thing is so dang heavy, and even that dual crown fork up front probably adds 5 pounds right there.
right. Okay. Definitely a bike for a specific audience. All right, moving on. Mate, is it that how you? Is it Mate? Mate? I don't
I
know.
assume it's mate.
Mate's new SUV cargo electric bike is designed to replace the family car. That would be nice.
Yeah, this is such an interesting design because, like, we've seen trikes before, and like we talked about with the RadTrike, there are two styles. This is the second style where you've got the two wheels in the front, so it's often called a tadpole trike. But the Mate SUV here, it's not just a tadpole trike. They really designed it to be sort of like the future of cargo electric bikes, especially front loaders with that front bucket. So it's very modular. The front bucket there, it's designed to be swapped out. So it can have like child carriers, it can have cargo things, you can have canopies. It seems like they're working on quite an ecosystem of accessories there. They've got another year or so before it comes out, so we're probably going to see more accessories in there. But it's also really designed for being on the road. It's got light strips that surround it, so from the front, from the rear, from the sides, anywhere around the bike, you can easily spot it. It's not just like a normal bike light that's like a tiny little dot. It's designed to be quite visible. And it is, fairly expensive. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6,000 euros. Like this thing is not low cost, but it does have good parts. It's got a Broza motor, especially with all of those different accessories that swap in. Very, interesting design from that sense that you could really replace a family car with it. But it's I would say super pricey is I think the technical term for bikes like this. But in terms of an actual car replacing bike, especially for Europe, where this is going to be available, I don't think they're going to bring this one to the U.S. So for Europe, I could actually see families using this as like a main family vehicle.
Yeah, it's kind of like the dream to be able to take your family around in this, although you could probably not take two adults on this in any comfortable, acceptable way. But certainly as a second car replacement, I think that's kind of where they're angling it. And it's a smart way to do it because, if you have a price in the 6,000 range, it's expensive, but when you compare it to the price of a car, which I think they did down here, yeah, €30,000 car versus a €6,500 bike. That's not a bad. That's like 6,500. That's you're saving a lot.
Yeah,
And then
and I
of
think
course
the
the fuel and everything else.
Yeah, and they even pitch it there. They're saying, the price of a second car. So I think for a lot of people, when you talk about replacing a vehicle, it's like, no, I need a car in my life. I get it. Like, for a lot of people, it's hard to imagine life without a car. But so many people that are two car families, especially those that live in a city, could so much more easily be a one car and one e-bike family. So I think they're really trying to make that point, and it's something that I think, people certainly need to consider more often, is that a second car shouldn't be the default. Think about other alternative vehicles that could be a second vehicle.
Yeah, and in addition to the money savings, like you have a whole lot more options when bike lanes and getting instead of parking in parking lots, you're parking right up against the venue that you're going to. It's more enjoyable. A lot of other like intangibles there for getting a bike
Yeah.
instead of a car.
I mean, the parking thing, as someone who, like, lives in a city, just, not having to search around for parking, like, forget about paying, like, huge cost savings, but just like the time it takes to find parking sometimes when you're in a car, like when my wife and I roll up on a bike or our scooters, like, oh my gosh, it is just so much nice. I feel like the parking thing should be at the top of the list for second car reasons or second
Yeah,
bike replacements.
it's funny. Sometimes my wife and I will go to the same venue, her in the car and me in a bike. And of course, she'll beat me down the road. But by the time she finds parking and, walks from the parking spot to like the school is usually the place where we go in two separate vehicles. I'm usually, I roll right up to the door, park my bike, and she's, just arriving at that point. So it actually saves time too in certain cases because of the parking issue.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on. Oh, our old friend Saunders Metacycle electric motorcycles are now delivering to over half of the U.S.
Yeah, we've seen Saunders kind of start to right the ship here. So with their low cost Metacycle, it started out a $5,000 electric motorcycle. Now it's $6,500. But in the electric motorcycle industry, that's quite low cost. The bike started with a lot of issues. So not just the bike, but the whole rollout. So they were about 8 or 9 months behind schedule with rolling it out. Once they did get the bikes out, it was like a crushingly slow delivery where a few people would get it. It was only in California in the beginning. They even stopped deliveries for a while because they had issues with having the proper certification to actually do deliveries. But they've really picked up deliveries again. It seems like they've brought in something like over 1,000 motorcycles based on the publicly available import data that people have pulled from customs, and now they're actually in over half of the U.S. So they've delivered, finalized deliveries in 12 states, and then they have bikes on the way to a number of others. So they're in the process of deliveries to 27 US states right now, which is a huge turnaround from just a few months ago when they were only delivering in California. And even then, it was like, if you were in San Francisco, you weren't going to get your bike for a while because you weren't close enough to LA, kind of thing. So it's good to see this moving forward, but at the same time, there are a lot of people that are still upset because it seems like Saunders doesn't have any rhyme or reason for the delivery order. A lot of people thought, like, okay, they'll just go down the list based on order number, first come, first serve. But that hasn't been the case, where a lot of people who were in like the second round of orders have gotten their bikes already, and people who are in the first round are still waiting, or people that are just much further down the list of the first orders are already getting them. And so as part of this update, Saunders also tried to clarify that they're sort of batch delivering based on color. So if you happen to live in a city where there are a bunch of the silver bikes or gray bikes now going there, you might get yours a lot late or a lot earlier than someone who ordered a black one, even if they were many months ahead of you in the order process. So it's causing some anger and confusion on the part of customers there, because a lot of people have been waiting at this point almost 2 years for their Metacycle, especially having paid in full almost 2 years ago. That's a long time to wait. But it does seem like the company is at least making good progress and expanding their deliveries significantly compared to where they were a few months ago.
Yeah, a few things there. One, we've seen in the auto industry, Tesla, Rivian, et cetera, have some troubles with the sequence of orders. And it's quite frustrating because, with Tesla, the Model 3 deliveries, Model Y deliveries, pretty much every delivery from Tesla, they've taken orders, you get in line, and then at the end they just deliver to the factory first, and they kind of just branch out from there with no attention to like when you ordered. People who order like 3 days ago get one, and you're in New York and you're waiting 2 years. I'm not mad about it though. Still a little bit mad, but
You sound fine.
yeah, I'm fine. I'll be fine. Um, so that's one thing. I imagine Saunders is the same way. They're like, we took orders, but hey, let's just get these things, nearest to the shipping container or whatever. Get these delivered as soon as we can, so we can get our cash and make some more of these things. The other thing is, Saunders, I think, had a little bit of an issue with the dealership license. Like they weren't quite legal to be a motorcycle dealer, but I guess that's taken care of now.
Yeah, they got that finished, I think, the end of November. So since solving that issue, they seem to have really picked up deliveries quickly. But yeah, there were a few weeks there where they didn't deliver any bikes.
Yeah, but I mean, now they're quite motivated because that's when they get the rest of their cash, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got a long list of reservations to get through, and I think last time we looked at their balance sheet, I think they had something like it was like 15 million in pre-orders or something like that that are technically liabilities until they actually deliver them, and then
right.
that money becomes an asset. So they've got a lot of reservations to fulfill still.
So 15 million, and what was the down payment on those things?
Um, the
The 500?
Yeah, I think it was 500, but you had to start paying like 1,000 a month. It wasn't like you could just
Oh,
wait
that's right.
with that. Yeah, so they start taking money pretty quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, glad to see these getting delivered. Glad to see them out on the roads now. There was some concern if they would even get made, but Saunders, like they always somehow make it through this. So good
Yeah,
for them. Good for the people that are getting their bikes.
never exactly what they say it'll be, but it does show up in the end. That's like the company's MO.
Yeah, like they always promise something crazy and they deliver something like almost crazy, or like what I mean.
They'll get you 85% of the way there.
Exactly. And if as long as you go in knowing that you're not going to get exactly what they're promising, you're in good shape. All right, moving on. Canadian company launches electric motorcycle that converts into a snowmobile. Perfect for Canada.
Yeah, right. So this is the Daymac Combat, which is sort of a fat tire electric motorcycle. It's not street legal, so it's not a dirt bike, but it's really like an off-road type motorcycle. And the cool thing about it is that it actually has a kit that you can get with it. I think it's a few extra $1,000, but it does swap it from a motorcycle for riding trails into basically a snowmobile or snow bike almost. So it's got a full, track attachment on the back. It's got skis up front. You even still have your suspension that comes with it. So, it's a pretty nice looking snowmobile, but you don't have to have two separate vehicles. You don't have to take up two spots in your garage. You don't have to spend a lot of money on something that you only ride for the summer or the winter. It gives you the chance to use the same bike all year round. Now, it's not going to be the best snowmobile or the best motorcycle. Usually whenever we have these hybrid type vehicles, they make compromises on both sides. So on the motorcycle side, it doesn't have very large diameter wheels. It only goes 44 miles an hour or 70 kilometers per hour, and it doesn't have a particularly large battery at just under 5 kilowatt hours, so kind of limited specs. On the snowmobile side, to be honest, I don't really know what makes a good snowmobile because I don't have a lot of snowmobiling experience. But I'm guessing that something that started life as a compromise of a motorcycle is not going to be like a, prime rate snowmobile. But I don't know. Do you know more about snowmobiles? Maybe correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, so I'm surprised you don't get any snowmobiling in between Miami and Tel Aviv. That's weird. Uh, so yeah, I'm actually in Vermont about to hit the slopes. They had 12 inches of snow last night, so it was mandatory for me to get up here. Um, so I actually don't know too much about snowmobiles. I've actually never even driven one. I've been on the back of one a few times, but so I don't know what makes a good snowmobile experience. But I do know that Fred talks quite highly of the Taiga ones, that electric snowmobiles that are made near him up in Quebec. So sorry I can't add any expertise there, but these do look fun.
Yeah, he's even got a reservation for one, right? The electric snowmobile.
Oh yeah, I think it's just it's a status symbol, and it's like skates. Like it's just one of those things you have up
When you
there.
go to Canada, you get issued your skates and your snowmobile.
Yep, and your hockey stick. All right, moving on. Indian man builds 6-seater electric bike for $150, and it absolutely rips. Indian man like Florida man, or
Something
just
like that. It's
yeah,
the Florida Man of the East. So this is a pretty ingenious design here. Basically, he took the components that you'd normally see on like an electric scooter, like a Vespa style electric scooter, and he built a custom frame. So it's kind of a ladder frame. It looks like a tandem bike. It's
it's
basically
kind of a
just
ladder frame, or it's just a ladder. Like he just pulled a ladder.
just he welded a fork onto a ladder, added
Okay,
suspension in the back,
there you go.
and created a 6-seater electric motorcycle. Basically, I mean, it's funny because each seat is different. It looks like one came off a tractor, a few came off
Yep.
exercise bikes. Like the handlebars are just straight pipe. The foot pegs also, it's just straight pipe.
Yeah, but it
Um,
works.
yeah, exactly. And you can see it's got like a giant lithium battery on the back there,
Yeah, it looks
seemingly
like it.
zip tied on, I think.
That those might be what do you call this? Elastic straps. I don't know. It's something not listed, I'm sure.
Well, it's just quick release, right?
Right.
Yeah, hot
Yeah,
swappable.
hot
So,
swappable.
but he says it actually gets like 90 miles or 150 kilometers of range, and it's not just like something that he
अरे
built
भाई क्या
for
बना हो
pictures.
कैसा रुको रुको रुको
It's actually we have videos of it riding around with 6 people on it, and it seems to work really well. In a second there, the video he's gonna have people like on a highway, and
What?
for
That
something
doesn't.
that was basically welded together out of trash, it appears it seems to work. Oh, is it the other? Oh, here we go. Yeah. I mean, these
I
guys are
like how
like
nobody's wearing a
flying.
helmet.
I think some people aren't wearing shoes either.
Oh God.
Yeah,
There's
like
maybe
there's
sandals, open toe. That's fine.
yeah, there's not a lot of safety equipment on this though. I haven't been to India myself, but every time I see videos of people riding scooters and motorbikes in India, I'm not sure one of them I've ever seen a helmet. So it's kind of a wind in your hair country, I guess, in that sense. But at least from the engineering side, it's pretty cool because I think it shows off just how simple these vehicles really are. Like
Hmm.
if you wanted to build like a custom gas motorcycle, there's so much more that goes into it. But if you just have like basic parts laying around from a trashed electric scooter or something, it's like a motor, a battery, a controller, and a throttle, and
And a
four
ladder.
parts and a
Yeah.
ladder, and you're good to go. You can actually like put together a fully functional 6-seater, in this case electric scooter. So it's kind of an odd project for sure, but something that's fun to see and highlights just how simple this technology really is.
Yeah. I mean, I when I see stuff like this, I love it, and I'm also like very scared for the people at the same time. But yeah, this one, like, it's not just super simple. He's got full suspension on this thing, which like is going to come in real handy if they're going pretty fast, and uh you don't want to be the guy in the middle with that flying up in the air. This thing actually looks like it moves out, like it's pretty fast. Um,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
that's a big battery in the back, so I would think it would be pretty fast. I don't see a wire going down. He must have like maybe he put the wire inside the thing there. I don't know.
That would be impressive if it has internal routing for the wires. One other thing that was kind of neat was, so the guy that tweeted this is actually he's not the chairman, I don't think, of Mahindra, but he's someone high up on the Mahindra board, or like one of the Mahindras. So from a very large Indian automotive manufacturer, it's like the size of GM basically, who
Right.
was basically sharing this guy's project here and saying like, this could have huge implications. Like, we could build these super cheap and create like, almost like a tour bus for in an electric motorcycle format. So kind of neat that it also got picked up by someone who is so supportive and also happens to basically run one of the largest automotive companies in the world.
Yeah, that's super impressive. I love it. I always love seeing stuff like this on Reddit and other places, so that's cool. All
Yeah,
right,
we're big
one
supporters
last
here of DIY.
for sure. And I should note that this is our last post, so if anybody has any questions, please put them in the comments. I know we started way early today because of the snowboarding, but we'll hopefully maybe we'll see somebody some questions here. Our last one is POL Lux is a solar powered boat that turns into a camper on the water. Love this.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. So, first of all, this is an electric catamaran. So it's got like a twin hull type setup. It's got two electric motors in back there, pretty standard electric outboard style, and it's got a modular setup. So you can choose different types of seating. It's got an asymmetrical console, so it's off to one side, which makes it so you've got more of like a conversation pit style seating. You get like, I think it's 13 people is the max capacity for the boat. So it's really designed to be sort of a social experience. It's not just like a, go out by yourself fishing kind of thing. It's even got this cool, net across the front, like a lot of catamarans have. So you can like lay down over the water while you're underway. But really, the cool part about this is that it's not just an electric boat, and it's not just a solar electric boat, which by the way, it's solar powered, but it's also a camper. So it's got a sort of pop up tent. So the walls go up, gives you some privacy, and it's got two beds there. So the seats convert into a bed, and then it's got a second bed that is suspended, kind of like a hammock, which as someone who gets motion sickness, the idea of being on a swaying bed on a boat is like already get me a little queasy right here in my office
Right.
chair. But for those with a strong stomach, that would probably be a pretty cool way to camp out on the water. So that's a pretty cool feature itself. But the other thing that's certainly worth noting is that the solar aspect of this boat, it's not just gimmicky like some solar boats or solar cars, they have like a little solar panel and they get a little bit of range. This one, it can actually power it even if the batteries are dead at it is a slower speed, so it goes like 4 knots if it's only being powered by the solar panel, whereas the full top speed under battery power as well is something like 11 to 13 knots, I want to say. So you're limited to like a third of the power, but you can even go with a dead battery. So if you were out there and your battery died, you would be in like limp hole mode on solar power, which is pretty neat in and of itself, I think.
As long as it's daytime.
As long as it's daytime, yeah. If
Right.
it's nighttime, you better pitch that tent
That's
and wait.
the or the paddles come out.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'd
Speaking of
prefer a
that,
tent.
yeah, no, this is a great idea. I love the idea. Especially if you live on a quiet lake or you don't want to make a lot of noise. Um, and camping out is kind of like van life for boats. Um, Speaking of this, how is your solar boat going?
So I am excited to say that the boat itself has arrived in the US. I just recently had it trucked to my parents' property, which is also home of the mini electric truck, if anyone knows about that project. So I've got
Soon to
a
be a museum.
yeah, absolutely. So now there's a like a 15-foot wooden crate in my parents' garage, sitting there taking up a ton of space, which I have been reminded of a couple of times
I'm
already.
sure they love that. They
Oh
love
yeah.
that whole
The,
garage being full of
the good
Micah
thing is
stuff.
it's only like 4 feet tall or something, so they've got a bunch of crap like piled on top of it for now. It's a surface until I get there, but soon in the next probably 2 weeks or so, I'll be headed back. I'll be uncrating or unboxing my electric boat, and I'm excited to get that thing in the water. We'll start it in. My parents have about a 1 acre lake on the property, so it's like a
Oh
nice
wow,
safe place that if it does go under, I can at least like just sort of doggy paddle to the shore. So that'll be like the proving grounds for it.
that's very convenient to have your own. Like I guess 1 acre lake is more like a pond, but that's even the excavation, or what do you call that when you rescue a boat from the bottom of the water? That's even, you know, that's all yours. Nobody's gonna go down and steal your boat.
Yeah, if you're in like a pond, do you have to go down with the ship if you're the captain, or if you can like kind of reach out and grab land, are you allowed to to do that?
I don't know. Yeah,
It's like
you're gonna
shoulder
be
deep.
fine. That thing's gonna be fine. Like I'm sure it's seaworthy or
Yeah.
lakeworthy or pondworthy,
Pond worthy, I'm not worried about. Eventually, I want
right?
to take it out on a river in Florida. We've got all those nice rivers that lead out to bays and gulfs. So that
Right.
one is going to be questionable. I think it'll be like fine in terms of not sinking. The bigger question will be if it's powerful enough to like fight the current to come back when I'm
I was,
done.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, probably start going up current.
Well, another great week of electric bikes and other fun stuff. The questions didn't come. I know it's early here, but we're all set.
Perfect. So we'll let Seth get out and hit the slopes. And thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be excited to see you in another 2 weeks for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast.